such a time as this. .today, not .com, not .org. .today, for such a time as this. .today. You can always find our newest material at our webpage. I would like for you, if you are able, to give me a thumbs up on the platforms so that we can know that we're coming through loud and clear. This is going to be an interesting, a very, very interesting a topic. I have with me roundtable Vicki, Tom, and Nancy. Vicki, take it away.
Thank you, Pastor James, and thank you everybody who is joining us tonight out there. Tonight we have a special guest, Tom Hampson, here with us in the studio. You may remember Tom, he's been with us before. We are here, as Pastor James said, to discuss the movie Sound of Freedom, which has taken in over $130 million so far at the box office. Many of you have probably seen the movie. The four of us here in studio have also seen it. As you probably know, it stars Jim Caviezel as Tim Ballard, a former agent with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security who quit and went on to found the organization Operation Underground Railroad in 2013. So we're going to talk about what was true in the movie, what was not, how it relates to the organization and Mr. Ballard. We're going to talk about what is the real problem out there when it comes to protecting children and some solutions that we can all get behind, because as Christians, we must be concerned with the truth. We are very big on that for such time as this, and especially when it comes to the protection of children. And so we want to leave tonight with some real solutions that we can all work on. So I'm just going to quickly recap Tom's background and why he is particularly equipped to provide perspective on this.
Mm-hmm.
He's an Air Force veteran where he served as an intelligence analyst in Western Europe. His interest in protecting children dates back to the 1970s as the chief investigator for a statewide investigative agency directed to look into the problem of commercial sexual exploitation of children. They looked into thousands of cases of child prostitution, child pornography, child abuse and neglect, child murders, and every other crime against children. One part of that investigation was the development of an undercover approach to proactively build criminal cases against these predators, and today, law enforcement agencies all over the world use these methods. After the initial investigations in the 70s and early 80s, and after starting up his own investigation business, Tom continued to be confronted by cases that involved child sexual abuse. And in 2006, Tom was asked by the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services to conduct an investigation into the problem of predator priests in Illinois. And one of the things he quickly learned was that whatever success law enforcement had in catching predators, it was not enough. And while thousands were being taken off the street, there were many others to take their place. So it was this investigation that prompted him to establish the Truth Alliance Foundation and dedicate the rest of his life to the protection of children by proactively educating people on how to identify predators and keep them away from children to begin with, and to know the signs to look for to recognize children who are being abused so they can be rescued as quickly as possible. So Tom also writes for Illinois Family Institute, and he has written two thorough articles on the issue we are discussing tonight, the movie and the organization, and we have that linked in our description, and I encourage you to read these articles in full. We will also touch on them. So in the article, Tom, you wrote, "In this post-truth era, reason carries little weight, and facts have been replaced by feelings."
Yep.
And so tonight we just want to make sure that as Christians we are being discerning.
Yes.
That we aren't letting our emotions take hold of us.
Yeah.
And that we don't believe everything we hear without checking into it. Because we all care about children. We all want to do and help them. So, and it's with that some of what you may hear tonight might be hard to hear. Because it was a great movie to watch, right? I saw it with my daughter, and it was one of the things you wrote, Tom, was that Sound of Freedom is an exciting movie, but don't watch it as a guide for how to fix sex trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
And you also wrote that even our former president, along with many others, have been taken in by the intense emotions generated by the images and story conveyed by the movie Sound of Freedom, despite clear evidence that the story is not true, the nature of the problem misrepresented, and the solution offered hopelessly flawed. And also, the Angel Studios, the film's distributor, also acknowledged that it took creative liberties. Another thing I read is that contrary to what is shown in the film, I'm sure Tom will talk about this once I stop talking, most child trafficking victims know and trust their traffickers.
Yep.
They are not kidnapped by shadowy strangers off the street corners.
Mm-hmm.
A Baylor University study found that less than 10% of child trafficking cases involved kidnapping.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right, Tom?
That's right.
And before Tom, I want to just say, as Christians, our first commitment is to God of truth, not to our feelings, to the truth. And so don't react that you're going to defend what you thought to be true. Your allegiance is to that which is true,
Right.
not what you originally thought it was true. And so Tom's background, his expertise, and his career uniquely qualifies him to speak on such issues. Okay, and if you don't have it, just at least be humble enough, because your commitment should be to the truth. Now, I haven't done as much as Tom, but working on a psychiatric unit, we dealt with a lot of kids who were abused. Not one of them was abused by someone they didn't know. They all knew their abuser. All of them, was it a cousin, or uncle, or a friend down the street, or a babysitter. I don't think I've ran across one kid. We had hundreds. One kid that was abused by someone they didn't know. That's the thing. They all knew them. So, but with that said, Tom, I'm sorry. Go ahead and.
So the main problem, right, was the mischaracterization of the problem, the misrepresentation of it.
Well, that was the main problem. I think the biggest problem was that the story itself draws you in emotionally, and the story is at its core not true.
So let's talk about that. So the main story with the brother and the sister.
The brother and the sister being kidnapped was based on a case involving Earl Venton Buchanan, who was just a typical pedophile, and he had groomed the grandmother, who was the guardian of the boy, to have a relationship with the boy. So the boy went with him all over the place, and he acted like a surrogate father or big brother or whatever it might be.
Did the grandmother know this? We're not sure.
We don't know if the grandmother knew it. Sometimes there are a lot of cases where the parent or the guardian, in certain cases, are aware that the kids are being sexually abused, and they don't care. I don't know if that's the case here.
Gotcha.
But the fact is that the boy had not been kidnapped by Earl Buchanan, and he hadn't even been recovered by Tim Ballard. It was the Border Patrol that initially arrested Buchanan when he came back across the border, and he didn't have the proper paperwork. They found a video in the car that showed Buchanan abusing the boy, and so that's when they arrested him. And Ballard came in and just handled the paperwork for the case to take it to trial. Most of the work, of course, the trial itself was handled by the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of California. But the other thing is that the boy hadn't been kidnapped. The girl's sister had never been kidnapped.
Boy's sister. Mm-hmm.
She was in back home with the grandmother, and there was no. The boy didn't give Ballard any necklace and say, "Would you please find my sister?" Because sister hadn't been kidnapped and she didn't need to be found. So to me, it's offensive to me that the falsehood is used to raise emotions. And this is a story that wasn't just in the movie. This is a story that Ballard has been claiming is true for years.
Outside, so just on his
Right,
on his tours and talking about
talking
things.
about it, talking to.
So this wasn't just the Hollywood.
Right, there's dozens of
embellishment. It
videos.
was, he's been sticking by this story.
There's dozens of videos where he's telling the same story over and over and over again over the past several years.
And you think, I mean, this is such a horrific topic that you shouldn't need to embellish it or make anything up, because
Right.
what is the truth is bad enough as it is.
Right. It makes me question the motives. I don't know what his motives are, but it makes me question the motives when he's using these lies. Because having investigated these cases, I know there are terrible instances of abuse. I know
Yes.
how, I know how kids get trapped into this being sexually exploited, and so that, and what I'm always concerned about when people not just embellish but outright lie about the story,
Right.
is that when the truth comes out, there won't be any more concern for the story itself. Well, it's all a lie, so why should we care about it?
Let me ask this question for the naysayer, for the people who say, how do I know what you're saying is true? How do you go about showing them that this is a story that he has embellished over years?
Well, in 2020 is when the only time I found him saying the name Earl Buchanan. That was and it's actually, there's a link on that in the first article I wrote with IFI. There's a link to that
Yeah, we're gonna
story.
we have that clip. I don't know if we want to watch that now or later.
up to you.
But that
And then the other thing is that you can go on pacer.gov and look up the actual case, which in the second article I wrote,
it's public information.
Yeah, it's public
case.
information. I actually provide the
'Cause it's an actual case.
title of the case and the case number in California. You do a name search on Earl Buchanan and find it in Southern District of California.
So
Yeah,
in an interview, he said that this movie was based on the Buchanan case.
Yeah.
Well, he
We
told
can watch that
the
video
story
clip maybe
in
right now.
2020.
Yeah, why don't we watch the clip?
Okay, we'll watch the clip. Here's the clip.
What was the moment where you saw something that just said, I'm taking this on as a life mission, not just as a part of my job, but...
It was the first time I saw a child that was from the videos, when I was like, this is it. I had to make a decision at that point. So what had happened was we got intel, an American man was kidnapping children in Mexico, smuggling them into the United States. And in San Bernardino, you can look at this case up. His name's Earl Buchanan. You can look it up. You can Google, learn all about the case. He had a compound up in San Bernardino where he was taking the kids and he was filming his sex acts with these kids.
He was having sex with them
Yes,
and filming
and filming it.
And then what, selling it online or...
Keeping it for himself, sharing it with people. And so this guy's coming across the border, and we're on the scene, and we get the kid out, this 5-year-old boy. And it was the moment that he ran.
5-year-old boy.
5-year-old boy.
Gosh.
And I recognized him from the video.
No way.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I've never seen one of the kids from the video. And I didn't know, I had a physiological reaction. Like, I didn't know if I could handle this. And then the kid kind of inherently knew we were the good guys, right? So he runs to us and jumps in my arms.
No way.
And he's like, he's holding me and he's shaking. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, does he speak English? Does he speak Spanish? Maybe both, I don't know. And he spoke perfect English, which was haunting to me because the only reason he did was because he had been with this guy, as it turned out, since he was taken as an infant.
Oh my gosh.
And he said to me, like no 5-year-old should ever have to say to anyone, he said, I don't belong here. And the pain was so severe for me because I could immediately multiply that statement by millions of kids. And that was it. And then that led to raiding the compound, and we found 11 other kids.
No.
Yeah.
How old range?
About from 6 to 12.
Wow.
So that was my point of like, I had to make a decision. I went home after that operation.
So the first operation.
That was the first time I'd done a lot of cases where we did the receiving end. So we did like the search warrants and arrests of pedophiles who were receiving child rape videos.
But they didn't have kids there.
Right. This was the first time I saw one of the kids from the video. video, and it like changed my life. But the change was either going to be I'm quitting forever or I'm all in, because you can't. It's too much to go one or the other. You can't go middle ground on this, right? And I went home that night after 2 or 3 days. Actually, I went home to my wife. She didn't really know what was going on. I walked in the house, and then I see my kids, right now, and they're playing and having fun. And this kid was literally 12 miles away. I lived 12 miles from the border. This was happening to this child, and the whole dichotomy of the whole, how can we be in the same community and hell here and almost paradise here for these children who have I lost my mind. Like I couldn't handle it. I saw my children being hurt. I went to and I literally fell down. Like my knees collapsed. I fell down, and my wife thought I was having a heart attack or something. She runs over to me. She's like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I'm like, "I'm out. I'm out or I'm in. Like I can't. This is so bad." And it was my wife again who said, she got me calm, and she said, "Look, it's hard. I know the pain. You're clearly suffering something, but how does that compare to what that child suffered?"
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, "No, you're right. That's it."
Yeah, you're not experiencing it.
Yeah, I'm like, I felt guilty. Like, how stupid. I'm up on my knee. I jumped up, and I'm like, I'm in 100%. But the thing that happened, and call this luck, providence, whatever, to me was special, is the little boy had a necklace. That little boy, the 5-year-old. And his sister had given him the necklace when they were separated by Buchanan. Yeah. Okay, and it was a little dog tag, and he gave it to me. He knew I had to go find his sister now.
Oh no.
Yeah, and we did. We got her out.
Oh my God.
But he gave me the necklace, and I tried to give it back. He's like, "No, it's yours. It's yours." This is when he was hugging me, and I'm like, "Okay." I put it in my pocket. Didn't think much of it, but later one of my children found it and said, "Would you get this?" I'm like, "How do I tell this story to my kid?" And I tell my kid what I can, and he says, "Isn't it cool that little kid put your name in the necklace, Dad?" I said, "What are you talking about? My name's not in the necklace." I'm like, yeah, your name's right here. And sure enough, I flip it around, and that little necklace had a scripture from the Bible on it, from the book of 1 Timothy.
Oh my goodness.
So that was like, to me, I was already feeling like, what am I going to do? Am I going to quit? Am I going to go full in? That necklace, it was like that little boy, whether he knew it or not, just gave me a commission. And that necklace, I wore that for every operation I did from that point on, and it was kind of like my symbol, like, I'm in now. Wow. So.
Wait a minute. After talking to you and then watching the video, he said he was on the scene.
Right.
You saying he was not on the scene?
Not on the scene. So it's all that story.
The little boy jumped in his arms at the scene.
No.
That's not true either.
No.
He said he was taken as an infant.
No.
The little boy, but no, Tom, the little boy looked him in the eyes and said, "I don't belong here."
No.
The little boy said when he was separated from Buchanan, the sister gave him the necklace.
No.
The little boy gave him a necklace with the scripture on it, Tom.
No. I'm sorry. It's none of it's true.
They had scripture on the necklace that he gave him, Tom.
So the part that's true is there was an Earl Buchanan, there was a boy.
Right.
Those two parts are true.
Right.
The boy was abused by Buchanan.
Right.
Those parts are true.
There's video evidence, but he didn't recognize the boy from the video.
Obviously, if he wasn't there.
The Border Patrol agent recognized the boy from the video that the Border Patrol agent watched, and that's why they arrested Buchanan.
So, last question. This is definitive. You can't argue it. It's a fact. He was not there.
No, he wasn't there when the boy was arrested, or when Buchanan was arrested. He handled the case after Buchanan and the boy was already in custody. And it's typically when the boy is taken into custody, Buchanan's taken into custody, they would turn the boy over to child services. They don't have the boy standing around in a police station waiting for some detective to come and question him on the case. It's just doesn't work that way.
So yeah, the question is, what is the motive for all of that? I don't understand what his motive is for to put it lightly, embellishing the story.
Well, it raises a lot of money. It makes a lot.
Yes, it does raise a lot of money. You're right.
And I'm sorry, Vicki. He didn't embellish the story if he wasn't there. Right? I mean, that was a lie. The flat lie. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So, getting back to, the problem needs to be defined properly. In order to fix any problem, right, Tom, you need to be able to identify. Nope, you said in your article, no problem can be solved unless you can see it clearly.
That's right. That is an absolute truth. You can't, if you don't see the problem clearly, you're going to attack the wrong thing.
Right, right. And so the kidnapping of children for the purposes of sexually exploiting them and trafficking them is rare.
Very rare, yeah.
So that doesn't mean, however, this is what, again, reading from your article, that sexual exploitation of children is rare. That is not what we are saying at all.
No.
In fact, it is a huge problem. In the United States alone, there are 60 million adult survivors of child sexual abuse.
Right.
10% of children are abused by an adult in the school system, sometime between kindergarten
You said
and
10%?
12. 10%.
Wow, I didn't realize that high.
Yeah, we talked about that when Tom was here last time. Yeah. It doesn't get, nobody talks about it, but 10% between kindergarten and 12th grade. And a total of 20% of children experience some form of child sexual abuse. 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys. Virtually, so those who are drawn into the sex trade, virtually all of them were sexually exploited by a trusted adult, either a family member, a friend of the family, a neighbor, a teacher, a religious leader, or a peer, usually older. So that's the problem.
Yes, that's the problem, because if you can reduce the number of kids that are getting sexually abused or manipulated, groomed, and sexually abused by somebody, you're going to reduce the pool of kids that are available to be sex trafficked.
I had a question at that point. That word you're using, groom, what does that look like? How does a person recognize that's happening?
Well,
That's an important question, I think, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's his
there are some things that you look for. First of all, I think if you see an adult befriending children, I would be alert.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of a first sign if they're befriending them, especially if they start trying to take them off to the side and try to isolate them from other people. If they try to be alone with them, and the other thing that if when kids are around, they tell sexually risque jokes. If they start to do a lot of touching, they build up the touching kind of thing. If they begin to confide in children, where an adult really isn't the one that should be confiding in a child.
No.
These are some of the signs that are observable that you can see. Well, you should keep your kid away from that person. That's the easiest way to do it. And actually, most of the predators that are out there will stay away from kids whose parents are engaged with the kid.
That's right.
Like when you go to, if you get your child is involved in sports, go to the games, be at practices, show that you're interested and engaged with the kid. That's going to keep predators away, because they look for kids who are isolated from others. They look for lonely kids. They look for kids who are maybe a single parent home where the mother or father is too distracted to be openly involved with the kid. A lot of the kids who were sexually abused by priests were were in single parent households, and the mother was very happy to have the attention that the priest gave, because it was like a surrogate father.
Right.
And they trusted him, and it was a horrible thing. You can't just automatically assume that the person is a good guy, because one of the things I've learned in 50 years of investigating all kinds of terrible people is that sometimes very likable people can be extraordinarily dangerous. In fact, there are some of the most likable people I've met are some of the most dangerous people I've encountered. And that's a counterintuitive kind of experience that you have, but you have to force yourself to think that way. It's just like with this movie, Sound of Freedom. It isn't that the trafficking isn't a problem. It's this movie misrepresents the problem. And that is and thus they're going to be spending money on trying to fix a problem that isn't there.
Instead of spending resources to address the real problems.
Right.
So the one other thing we probably should quickly address about the movie before we move on to some other things is the island raid, because at the end of the movie they did show actual footage of that raid. So obviously that raid was a real raid that happened in Colombia.
Right.
But again, the way it was portrayed was not 100% accurate.
Right. The real raid, they recovered, or the prostitutes on the island ranged in age from 13 to 20, and to my knowledge, none of them had been kidnapped. They were all there voluntarily, or quote voluntarily, and
As voluntarily as it can be.
right. These are a lot of what happens even here in the United States, and certainly in third world countries. Colombia, for example, has an age of 14 as age of consent,
Wow.
which is pretty young. And many of the many girls and boys too, at early ages, earn a living by selling their bodies on the street. It's illegal for them because you have to be 18 in order to be. Prostitution is legal in Colombia, but you have to be 18. So, not everybody obeys the law. If you need money, there are certain ways you can find it. And these kids who are street smart have a lot of savvy. They know how to make money, and they sell themselves because they know there's people that are interested in buying what they have to offer.
But like we could say, well, you had asked earlier, Nancy, if that, you brought up Epstein's Island. Probably a lot of the kids, the girls who were on Epstein's Island probably weren't technically kidnapped either,
No,
right? But they were
weren't
groomed and they
Right.
were exploited. Yeah.
Well, they were paid. They were brought there. They came there from all over the world, and he flew them into the island.
Mhm.
That's an operation that was protected by a lot of people that had a lot of money and government power too.
Yeah.
Now this island that they had down there was just a party island that they set up in order to catch some of these pimps who were prostituting kids and adults. It wasn't just kids that they were prostituting.
So, the biggest problem you wrote in your article, the biggest problem globally is the age of consent that you've just been talking about. In
Right.
Nigeria, the age of consent is 11.
Right.
What?
Yeah. And it used to be 12 in the Philippines. Now it's 16. Most of the world is 16. But Thailand and Cambodia are 15. And Burkina Faso is 13. And in many Muslim countries, there is no age of consent. Marriage is the age of consent. And in some of these countries, girls as young as 9 are given in marriage.
Yeah, we know who married a girl at 9, but keep going.
Yeah, we do. And there are global efforts to decriminalize and even legalize sex work. And several international organizations in some part of the United Nations, including the International Planned Parenthood Federation, believe the age of consent should be eliminated. The position of these groups is that children have a right to experience sexual pleasure whenever and with whomever they want.
You say Planned Parenthood? You didn't say that.
International Planned Parenthood, yeah.
Planned Parenthood?
Sure.
Mhm.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
Of course. Why not?
One of the reasons you wrote in your article that the age of consent is so important is that we know that the vast majority of children who wind up being commercially trafficked were sexually abused first. I think we've already said that. We already said that. So then trafficking in the United States, the vast majority of children who are sexually trafficked in the United States are children who are runaways, not kidnapped.
That's right.
The girls tend to be manipulated by men who groom them into a relationship and then con them into sex work.
Mm.
So, should we talk a little bit now about the financials? Because I think, we talked earlier about one of the reasons possibly for embellishing is that you
It earns more money.
Yeah, you raise more
Well,
money
he's
when.
he's definitely OUR is definitely an organization that knows how to raise money.
Yep.
And a lot of it is raised by these stories. They have meetings. They have these big gatherings of people who are willing to come up with money, and they tell these stories that aren't true, and they wind up getting a great deal of money given to them by wealthy people, because it was originally started in the movie. One of the things that was just misrepresented in the movie was Ballard had said he risked his entire future because he gave up his job and he didn't know where he was going to make any money, but he just kind of quit on the spot and didn't know where the next dollar was going to come from. In reality, he had already lined up over $1 million in support from Glenn Beck to start Operation Underground Railroad before he ever quit. So he already had $1 million when he started. Now, that's a lot of money for somebody to start a nonprofit organization. That's quite a bit. And because of his associations, he had a lot of contacts with people that had money, and that's who he's telling these stories to.
But now, again, one could chalk that off as a movie embellishment. Did he ever say that in an interview in real life?
Oh, he always said that in
interviews.
In interviews, yeah.
I would listen to one where he said the pension, I think, right, it was the pension he was giving up was worth millions. And I'm like, man, how are a government worker, like, he said a number like $12 million, I think it was.
No, he only worked there for 10 years. So
how could you have a pension worth that much? I wish I should have clipped that for tonight.
When you say that he had $1 million, how do we know that? You're saying that. How do you know that?
there are records that show that he had the money, the backing from Glenn Beck.
Before he left.
Right.
The dates line up that he had it before he left.
Right.
So just again, we're talking about this because we want to be discerning Christians. We all have a limited amount of time, energy, and funds
Yes.
to give to any
Yes.
worthy cause. So that's why, I want to talk about the financials, because I personally, I look at Charity Navigator when I want to start donating to a place, if I don't know the folks who run it already personally. And I want to know how much of their money is going to the actual cause versus, fundraising or administrative work. I want to know how much they're paying their people, because I know these folks need to make money and and pay for their families' bills. I completely understand that. Every nonprofit needs paid people, absolutely. So real quick, in 2022, OUR took in almost $24 million. In 2021, they took in more than $42 million. And in 2020, they took in $45 million. And in that year, they only spent $13.5. So according to their annual report, 72% of what they bring in goes to the mission. And 14% goes to administration and 14% to fundraising. I don't like those numbers. I would not personally be donating to this organization given those numbers. I like to give to organizations where around 90% is going to the mission.
So 90% is a good ratio.
Yeah, 72 is quite low.
Okay.
And then as far as the salaries, the compensation for the officers, in 2022, according to the IRS Form 990, which we have in front of us, Tim Ballard was paid $525,000 as founder and CEO. Brad Damon, as president, was paid $546,000. And the CFO, Simon Brewer, was paid $379,000. Those are very high salaries, in my humble opinion. So, I'm not saying they don't do anything worthy. I'm just saying we all have to make our own decisions on where we put our time, energy, and money. So just personally, I don't think I'll be
What's
donating.
a chief
to them.
experience officer? What is that?
I have no idea.
A chief experience officer make
I've
$263,000.
never heard of that.
Me neither.
I don't know. So now let's maybe move into some solutions. And again, from Tom's article, you put, what problem does Sound of Freedom point us towards fixing?
Or do we have to link to Tom's articles?
We do
The
in the
description.
description. Yep.
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 Online?
Yep.
Okay.
They're on illinoisfamily.org, and the direct links are in the description of the video.
Gotcha.
It says it seems like it points towards spending more resources to stop the kidnapping and organized trafficking of children. In fact, that is exactly what Matt Osborne, the president and CEO of OUR, hopes. He said he hopes that it will create this movement of people to donate to OUR so we can fund additional rescue teams in the United States and around the world. So that's definitely one of their intentions with the movie. However, it doesn't look, because also they have, I forgot to mention this, they have a total of more than $80 million in assets.
And we don't know what that is.
We don't know what the assets, if it's just money sitting in a bank or what it, right? If it's just money sitting in a bank, they took in a certain amount of money, but they only spent a certain amount, then the leftover is possibly sitting in a bank. I don't know. We don't have
Or
any more.
sitting in a house in Malibu.
Hopefully not.
Well,
Okay.
if I can say in all fairness, an international global organization, that's really not a lot of money.
Okay.
I don't
Okay.
think it is. But my concern would be the accountability. Where's
Right.
the
Exactly.
accountability for how it's being spent?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it seems like a lot of money to me, but yeah, not every.
To us, it would be, yes.
Yeah. Well,
yes.
Well, even for an operation like this, it's pretty darn. It's quite a bit for even if it is an international organization. They had gross receipts in 2022 of $56,673,000. That's a lot of money. I mean, you can do a lot of work on that. When I used to work for the state, of course, this was back when they still had covered wagons, but our whole budget was a fraction of that, just a fraction of that. We had over 20 investigators, so and we did a lot for that, and we went all over the United States too.
Yeah. So again, that would speak to the accountability. Because
Right.
I know
Yeah.
international ministries that would not be a lot of money.
Okay.
So I think the accountability
Right.
is the important piece.
Well, yeah,
My
but they're
mind.
not like World Vision. This is not a World Vision
No,
operation.
I know, but I'm just saying, yeah.
Yeah.
But they are seems like they are functioning globally. So, yeah.
Mhm.
But where's the accountability?
Right.
That's the question. Yeah.
So, Tom, you said the first step in solving the problem is for adults to become much more knowledgeable about it.
Yeah, it's unfortunately people are way too uninformed about what the issue is, or even how to recognize it. You know, when the country was founded, if you're going to be a pioneer, you better know when you're traveling west who the predators are. You know what the predators are. You better be able to recognize a bear and know what to do if you encounter one. But here in our world today, people have no clue what's dangerous and what isn't. I see them all the time. Parents just giving their kid a smartphone or an iPad or something and let them just roam on the internet. Well, that's like turning the kid loose in that bar in Star Wars. You know the
Ticatina.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's extremely dangerous. They don't recognize what the dangers are. They can't tell what a predator is. They don't know how to protect their children. They have no clue. And so the first thing is to learn about the problem, and that requires a lot of study because there's just it's gotten out of hand in this country, and it's even worse overseas.
Mm-hmm.
So
So
that's
you-
the first step.
Yeah, and you mentioned a couple of books you
Right.
recommend folks reading by your late friend Dr. Judith Reisman called Sexual Sabotage.
Right. That's an excellent book. Anna Salter wrote a book, Predators, which is a good one, and there's another book by Dr. Carla Van Dam about identifying child molesters to be able to recognize these kinds of it gives you the lay of the land. It kind of gives you an overview of what's going on. And then as your child gets older, as they, as you go, how to deal with kids using the smartphone and computers. Their FBI has resources on how to protect your child online. There's the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children have resources. There's a lot of groups that have resources available for parents that they just have to steadily become more familiar with what the problem is and how to deal with it in their own families.
I do want to take questions if we have them. Ruth asked a question, what about children trafficked into the U.S. because of the open border? I'm not quite sure I understand your question, Ruth. Can you clarify what specifically, what about? I mean, what exactly are you asking? So go ahead and text us your questions so Tom can ask. But if you have any other questions you have towards Tom, please let us know.
And then you also, we also link, because you linked in your article, so we linked it as well, a simple guide provided by the U.S. State Department to be able to learn to recognize trafficking victims when you see them, as well as what to do if you suspect someone you encounter has been trafficked.
Right, that's right. And then in education also, the Sesame, the Stop Educators Sexual Abuse and Misconduct and Exploitation.
Yeah.
That's a good website to be familiar with as well.
I was going to mention it. It's probably beyond our discussion tonight, but these kids are being groomed in the school districts right now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, that's
100%.
yeah.
Well,
people
that's
need
by
to be
design.
aware.
That's
People
by
need,
design.
You
yeah,
know,
people need to be aware.
See, the thing is, one
Yeah.
of the reasons why kids who are groomed and become sexually active at an early age, and why the age of consent is so important, once a child becomes sexually active, it's very easy to take the next step and provide sex for money. When we did the investigation back in the 70s, there was a 14-year-old girl that became our informant about some of the issues, and she had been selling herself in exchange for drugs in the local park. We actually had a case that we developed that the prosecutor wouldn't take back in those days because they said, well, she was already a prostitute. That wouldn't go over well with the jury. But it really, at 14, they cannot legally give consent. So any sex with them is a criminal offense, whether they sell themselves or not. However, with the child himself, when they don't look at themselves that way. They look at, hey, they're hustling you. You're not the one that's abusing them once they've already become sexually active. So they're the ones that are hustling you.
Yeah, I remember as far as being able to identify people, especially when we're in airports and on airplanes. I read a story recently where I think it was the flight attendant. She noticed a young kid with an older man, and the way the child was dressed and acting, she just thought something was up, and she was able somehow to communicate privately with the child to confirm, and she did save that kid. So that was great.
Yeah, so if you become aware of what it is you're looking for, you can recognize it and actually do something about it. It doesn't happen to everybody. It doesn't happen all the time. But I think it's incumbent on every adult to be equipped to protect any child that might be in need. Even the hand signals, knowing the hand signals.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
And your children need to know the hand signals of what that they can give.
Am I the only one that doesn't know what hand signals are?
Is it something like behind the...
Yeah.
this?
So
Yeah.
they do a secret hand signal like
Who does that?
like the
Chil-
hands up.
Help-
Children
help
who
me.
Who need help?
Yeah.
who need help, and so then you see it, and then you're supposed to call the police or intervene or say.
How does that look like? Is 4 fingers behind the back?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, I
like
think it's
that.
4 fingers up, the thumb in,
Thumb
and
is
they
over.
do it
Yeah,
usually behind
usually
their back.
behind their back, or they'll
Yeah.
do it in the
Okay.
window of a car.
Oh, okay.
I
So
didn't
the
know
children need to know know what to do in the case they are kidnapped, because actually
that. Okay.
10% of kids are sexually abused by 10% of the kids who are sexually abused are sexually abused by a stranger.
You see how many?
10% of the
10%.
kids who are sexually,
So
10%
9%.
of the 20% of kids. That's actually where Elizabeth Smart is one that is an example where she was kidnapped. Adam Walsh, who really is his father. Is it Adam, or is the father named Adam?
No, I think the son was Adam. The
Yeah.
dad was John.
John. Yeah, okay. National Center for Missing and Exploited Children was started at John Walsh's impetus because of the kidnapping and murder of Adam Walsh. Now, and a lot of the kids that are kidnapped and sexually abused are also murdered.
Yeah.
So,
The other thing too that you mentioned was in the article was to find other charities engaged in effective efforts to protect and rescue children. There's a
Right.
lot more than OUR. If you're looking for other ones, I'm sure there are, and I can also research and put some in the description, but, safe houses too. I remember one of the former Illinois legislators, one of the good guys who lost re-election, of course, he was working for the only safe house in Illinois for minors coming out of sex trafficking. I don't know the name of it off
Right.
the hand, though. So there are, more places locally that maybe you want to donate your time, energy, and money to. Again, everybody has to make their own decision, but there are lots of options out there.
there's a national organization too called In Our Backyard. They're very active in they're from the Oregon area, but they're very active every year at the Super Bowl. They send a team to the Super Bowl and help identify and rescue victims there, and they're active in providing information to like 7-Elevens on how to recognize kids who are trafficked or anybody who might be trafficked. So it's a
Well, that's a great tip.
they teach people how to recognize local problems, and they're all over the place. I can't remember if I had mentioned before about the street gangs being involved in sex trafficking quite extensively.
No, you didn't.
Some of them are even organized to the extent where they actually have bought apartment buildings where they put the prostitutes up in the apartment buildings and they sell drugs out of them and they sell the girls out of them too, or they take over a hotel, some seedy hotel that they operate, and they'll operate for a while. So you can recognize this kind of activity going on if you look for it.
Mm-hmm. Someone just sent me, I was looking for a text about a local ring in the northwest suburb that was just busted up
Oh, really?
a few days ago.
In
Yeah.
Kane County, there was one
Yeah.
in Kane County. That was
There was one here, I think
here?
either in Schaumburg and
Oh, really?
Palatine also, they
Oh, yeah.
said.
I didn't
Right,
see
Nancy,
that
was
one.
it
It was local, yeah.
It was Palatine or Schaumburg? I can't remember. I think it was
Yeah, I
Schaumburg.
don't remember,
Oh,
but
I
it was
didn't-
really near to us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
Just recently.
Yes. Yes.
I don't remember seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But the one in Kane County that they broke up sounds like it was one of these human trafficking operations, like from that they were from out of the country that they were brought in to work the streets.
If I could say something, as believers, we're just in a time we really need to get courageous, get out of our buildings and engage ourselves in our culture. I think we're in a time we really need to start doing that. You know, get out and engaging
Absolutely.
ourselves in these problems.
Wow.
Wherever the Lord's leading you, you need to put your boots on the ground somewhere. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I concur.
Yeah.
All right. That's all I had.
That's all you had.
Do you have anything else to add, Tom?
Well, there's other things that people can do also in terms of staying engaged with their kids. Also, they need to help educate other parents. If they educate themselves, they need to educate other parents, and they need to spread the word about how important it is to prevent children from being sexually abused in the first place. This idea that children have a right to engage in sexual activity at whatever age is a horrible philosophy.
But that is what the philosophy of the public school systems in the state of Illinois.
That's exactly right. And so that's one of the things that people have to take back our culture. We can't just sit back and let the culture take over the church and take over all the things that have served to protect children in the past. The innocence of children are being destroyed right before our eyes, and we're not doing anything about it. So that's the first place that we need to focus on, is protecting the innocence of children.
But you have a culture now where drag queen story hour is not only common but being promoted, and they don't even see the danger of it. You know, I just think, Tom, tell me if I'm wrong. We don't have the same values of those who bring their kids to drag queen story hour. It's not like you can't find common ground with that. People that want to destroy the innocence of children. I don't know if we'll ever be able to find common ground with that side. They need to be defeated. And how you go about that, how do we go about destroying that type of ideology? Boy, I know there's one surefire way found in Leviticus, but other than that, I don't know what else you do to destroy that type of mentality.
Well, prayer. I think prayer would be a big piece of this. I think it's spiritual at its root.
Prayer is the first step.
It's spiritual at its root. It is.
It is, that's for sure.
Of course it is.
And we as believers have great authority in that realm, so it's got to start there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I agree. There's no common ground to be found with those folks who take kids to pride parades where men are literally naked, showing their genitals to young kids. I don't know. I have nothing in common with you. And yes, I will pray for you.
Yeah, even some churches are allowing that. They're bringing the drag.
Churches are allowing drag queen story hours. Organizations that meet on Sunday morning may allow that.
Thank you. Okay, fair enough, Pastor. I got you. Thank you. That's a very important distinction.
Yeah, there's no one who has the Spirit of God that allow that.
Thank
stuff.
you.
That is demonic. It's demonic.
You're right. Yes.
Well, the strange thing is that everybody's so interested in helping their churches grow. But it's the most orthodox churches that are growing, and it's the least orthodox, the more culturally sensitive churches that are declining in membership.
Yeah, and I had a thought about that. It's like, because when the church is no different than your life Monday through Saturday, do you really feel an urge to get there on Sunday? No, I feel a strong urge to go because this place is so different than anywhere else in the world. But those places, like I said, they're just organizations. You know, you may as well go to the health club, because it doesn't feel any different. Yeah. That's my thought on that.
Well, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Vicki. Any questions, please put it in the description. In the comment afterwards, or email us at forsucha@gmail.com, and we'll try our best to get to you. Know it was a heavy topic. Probably bust some bubbles, but we are people of the truth. That's where our allegiance lies, if you are a Christian, and that's where we follow. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.